Most men don't lose relationships because they're cruel, distant, or heartless. They lose them quietly, slowly, by forgiving things they should never have forgiven, not out of strength, but out of fear. Fear of conflict, fear of being alone, fear of being seen as too much. And that fear teaches a dangerous habit, tolerating what slowly erodes respect. You were taught that patience is masculine, that understanding is love, that letting things slide makes you mature. So when the small disrespect shows up, you hesitate. A dismissive tone, a broken promise, a boundary crossed with a laugh. You feel the discomfort rise, then you push it down. Am I overreacting? You ask yourself. Maybe I should let it slide. And in that moment, something subtle happens. Not in her, in you. Because every time you forgive what violates your standards, you train yourself to accept less than you deserve. You tell yourself it's kindness, but your nervous system knows the truth. It feels like betrayal, quiet, invisible, personal. You remember other times, other faces, other moments when you stayed silent and called it peace. And each time, the same pattern followed. The connection didn't deepen. It thinned. Most men don't realize this because society praises tolerance without teaching discernment. You're told to be easygoing, flexible, understanding. But no one tells you that unearned forgiveness is not compassion. It's self-abandonment. And women feel that shift instantly. Not consciously, not maliciously, but intuitively. Respect begins to drain when standards disappear. Attraction doesn't run on apologies or explanations. It runs on respect. Respect for your time, your boundaries, your values. When you forgive too easily, you communicate something you never say out loud. That your limits are negotiable, that your presence is cheap, that staying matters more than self-respect. And once respect is gone, love starts to wobble. Not because she's bad, not because you failed, but because attraction obeys a different currency. So the real question isn't whether you should forgive. It's whether you're forgiving from strength or from fear. And how do you tell the difference before it costs you everything? Every mistake she makes triggers a reaction in you, whether you notice it or not. A late reply, a broken promise, a line crossed and laughed off. In that split second, before logic arrives, your nervous system chooses a response. Most men think they're choosing freely. They're not. They're defaulting to what feels safest. And that default is usually the wrong one. Some men mirror. They pull back, go cold, return the same energy with silence and distance. Inside, the thought sounds calm. I'll show her how it feels, but the emotion underneath is hurt. Others punish. They become sarcastic, passive-aggressive, sharp. So this is how it is now. They think, hoping the sting will restore balance. It never does. A third group confronts immediately, explaining, negotiating, laying everything on the table. We need to talk. They say, believing clarity will fix the tension. Sometimes it soothes. Often it exposes need. Then there's a response most men don't even recognize as a response. No forgiveness. Not punishment. Not confrontation. Just a quiet recalibration. A grounded pause. You notice what happened. You register how it made you feel, and you adjust access accordingly. No speeches. No drama. No resentment. Your standards remain intact, and your behavior reflects them. Here's a relief most men feel when they finally see this. It's not about being harsh or soft. It's about being accurate. Mirroring feels strong, but is reactive. Punishment feels justified, but erodes trust. Confrontation feels mature, but can collapse polarity when done from fear. The fatal choice is forgiving without consequence. Smiling, staying, and teaching your nervous system to swallow disrespect. The outcome of a relationship is decided less by what happens and by how you respond when it does. That choice writes the emotional rules she follows. Archetypal men fall on opposite ends. One explodes, one tolerates. Yet both lose the same thing, respect. The man who keeps it chooses with intention, not impulse. And the response most men misunderstand is the one that preserves everything. Not every pullback is disrespect. Sometimes it's just information, a shift in tone, a delayed reply, a subtle cooling that has nothing to do with losing interest, and everything to do with her checking the emotional ground beneath her feet. The problem is not the pullback itself. The problem is what most men do the moment they feel it. The instinct is to chase clarity, to close the distance with words, to lean forward emotionally and ask, without saying it out loud, "Are we okay?" That instinct feels loving, even mature, but it quietly hands over your center. The moment you chase a pullback, you teach your nervous system that your stability depends on her attention. Attraction doesn't grow there. It suffocates. Mirroring, when done correctly, isn't silence as punishment. It's silence as composure. You notice the change, you don't dramatize it, and you don't rush to fix it. You simply match energy without resentment. Your life doesn't pause. Your tone doesn't tighten. Your presence remains steady. Inside, there's no panic, only observation. Interesting, you think. Let's see. This is where confidence replaces neediness. The needy man feels the shift and scrambles. The grounded man feels it and stays where he is. One says, "Did I do something wrong?" The other says nothing and means it, not because he's playing a game, but because he knows attraction breathes in space. He understands that not every fluctuation requires a response. To her, this lands differently. She senses that you didn't flinch, that her momentary distance didn't destabilize you. A quiet question forms in her mind, unspoken but powerful. Why isn't he reacting? That question is the beginning of recalibration. Respect starts to rise when she realizes you're not chasing reassurance. Mirroring is not withdrawal. It's presence without pursuit. It's emotional self-respect made visible through behavior. And when done from calm strength, it often draws her back without a single word exchanged. But silence alone isn't always enough. Because sometimes what you're facing isn't a test. It's a boundary being crossed. Some behaviors don't need discussion. They need consequences. Not loud ones, not emotional ones. Quiet, clean consequences that speak through action, not argument. This is where most men lose control, not because they're weak, but because they misunderstand what punishment actually is. Punishment is not anger. It's not raising your voice, listing grievances, or trying to make her feel bad. That kind of reaction only proves she has power over your emotions. Real punishment is much simpler and far more effective. It's the removal of rewards, because behavior that gets rewarded gets repeated, and behavior that loses its reward quietly dies. Think about the moments that feel small but corrosive. She makes rude jokes at your expense. She constantly complains and expects you to fix her mood. She talks about other men to provoke a reaction. The average man either laughs it off while resentment builds, or snaps and creates drama. Both reactions teach you the same lesson. She can behave poorly and still keep your attention. The composed man does something different. His tone cools. His interest fades slightly. He leans back instead of leaning in. If she says something disrespectful, he might respond with calm dismissal. "That's not interesting," he says, and changes the subject. Or he simply becomes less available. No explanation. No sulking. Just a noticeable shift. Inside, there's no rage. Only clarity. This doesn't earn access to me. That's the message. And it lands because it's consistent. There's no dramatic exit, no passive-aggressive silence. Just a subtle but unmistakable loss of attention. The reward is gone. This is where power lives. Not in control over her, but in control over what you give. Attention is currency. Energy is currency. When you stop spending it on behavior that disrespects you, you're not punishing her. You're respecting yourself. Most spoiled behavior survives only because someone keeps feeding it. The moment you stop, things change. Sometimes she adjusts quickly. Sometimes she doesn't. Either way, you've sent a clear signal without saying a word. And yet, there are moments when even this isn't enough. Because some lines, once crossed, demand more than silence. If you don't speak now, you'll lose respect for yourself. And once that respect erodes, no amount of affection can save what follows. This is the moment most men avoid, not because they don't know what to say, but because they're afraid of sounding harsh, afraid of conflict, afraid of losing her. So they stay silent, and pay a much higher price later. Calm confrontation is not an explosion. It's a line drawn with a steady hand. Anger makes you loud. Calm makes you undeniable. When you speak without shaking, without pleading, without trying to convince, your words land heavier than any raised voice ever could. This isn't about winning an argument. It's about naming a standard. There comes a point where silence turns into permission, where patterns repeat, where you feel something tighten in your chest because you know this behavior shouldn't be happening anymore. That's your signal. Not to threaten, not to lecture, but to be clear. You choose the moment when emotions are cool. You look her in the eye, and you say it simply. When you speak to me like that, I don't accept it. Pause. Let it breathe. You can disagree with me. You could be upset, but that tone doesn't happen again. No insults. No history lesson. Just the behavior and the boundary. She might test it. Push back. You're too sensitive, she says. Or you're overreacting. And you don't argue the label. You return to the line. I'm telling you what works for me. That's it. Calm, grounded, finished. This is where standards stop being implied and become real. Where leadership shows up not through dominance, but through self-respect. You're not asking her to change. You're informing her the conditions required to stay close to you. And here's the quiet power of it. You're completely prepared to walk if it continues. Not as a threat, as a truth. Because the moment you say, this behavior stops, or I do, you've already chosen yourself. And if she still doesn't change, then the final decision becomes unavoidable. Some actions end the relationship immediately, not because you're heartless, but because there are lines that, once crossed, change how you see yourself if you stay. This is the part most men understand intellectually, yet fail to live by when emotion floods in. Second chances feel noble on the surface. They sound mature, forgiving, but when the violation is deep betrayal, repeated disrespect, humiliation, those second chances don't heal you. They slowly teach you that your boundaries are negotiable. And every time you accept what you said you wouldn't, something inside you collapses a little more. Betrayal is not confusion. It's not a misunderstanding. When someone chooses another person behind your back, they've already made a decision that didn't include you. And no amount of explaining, crying, or promising rewrites that choice. Staying after that doesn't make you loyal. It makes you invisible to yourself. Repeated disrespect is the same poison, just slower. You spoke. You were clear. You drew the line calmly. And she crossed it again. At that point, the issue is no longer behavior. It's the pattern. And patterns don't change because of hope. They change only when consequences are real. Walking away here is not dramatic. It's quiet, heavy, controlled. You don't list everything she did wrong. You don't argue details. You don't try to make her understand your pain. You say it simply. I told you this was a line for me. It didn't change. So I'm done. And you mean it. She might cry. She might blame you. She might suddenly promise everything you waited to hear before. And this is the hardest moment, because now she's reacting to loss, not to respect. And if you stay now, you teach both of you the same lesson again. Leaving without hatred is the final act of self-respect. No insults, no revenge, no begging, just distance, silence, and dignity. You grieve privately. You heal slowly. But you don't abandon yourself to avoid being alone. Because this was never about punishing her. It was about refusing to punish yourself. And here's the truth most men miss. This isn't about her anymore. The man who can leave is the man who never loses himself. Not because walking away is easy, but because it proves something deeper than attraction or control. It proves you're not trapped by fear. And fear, more than any woman, is what keeps most men stuck. The real prison was never her behavior. It was the quiet panic underneath it. The fear of starting over. The fear of silence. The fear that this might be the last chance. That fear whispers dangerous lies. What if I don't find better? What if I end up alone? What if I'm overreacting? And for a long time, those thoughts sound reasonable, responsible, safe. But then something shifts. You begin to see that staying where you are disrespected doesn't protect you from loneliness. It guarantees it. Because even when she's there, you're already alone with your self-doubt, already negotiating your standards, already shrinking. Walking away doesn't mean you won. It means you chose yourself. And that choice rewires something fundamental inside you. Scarcity fades. Abundance doesn't mean endless women. It means endless options for dignity, peace, and self-respect. You stop clinging. You stop chasing. You stop asking to be chosen. You tell yourself quietly, I'll be okay. And for the first time, you mean it. This is where your identity rebuilds. Not around approval, not around being needed, but around standards that don't bend when emotions rise. You realize that respect feels better than reassurance. That calm feels better than chaos. That being alone for a while is lighter than carrying a relationship that costs you yourself. And the irony is this. When you stop fearing loss, you become someone others don't want to lose. Not because you threaten to leave, but because you can. The world is full of options, but only if you're willing to walk toward it. If this story resonated, subscribe for more conversations men are rarely taught to have, and share this with a man who needs to remember his standards.